Hello and welcome to this really exciting President's Panel, where we're going to introduce you to some amazing female leaders in the world of health and safety. So excited. My name's Gardner-Aston and I am the chair of OneWish, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome 5 really influential women to this panel discussion. They're all fantastic advocates for women in our profession and all have a story to tell about how they've advanced up the career ladder, how they've overcome challenges and biases, the theme for this year's International Women's Day, and how they're committed also to encouraging more women into the profession at the start of their career, and also those who are looking to make a positive change in their own field, who are maybe midway through their career or even thinking of a career change. So it's absolutely fantastic to welcome you all here today. So without further ado, I will introduce everybody as they are on my screen. Firstly, we have Christl Aggus, President of the Canadian Society of Safety Engineers. Christl has 20 years of industry experience under her belt and the last 10 years managing a successful consulting firm. Welcome, Christl.
Thank you.
Next, we welcome Julie Barratt, who is the President of the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. Julie is both an EHO, an Environmental Health Officer, and a barrister, and has been employed as the Director of the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health in Wales before opening her own legal training company. It's fantastic to welcome you, Julie.
Thank you very much.
Thirdly, on my screen, we've got Ruth, who is the co-president of the International Institute of Risk and Safety Management. Ruth is the director of production safety at Netflix currently, and has previously been group operational risk director at ITV, which is a television company in the UK. Welcome, Ruth. Our fourth panel member is the IOSH president and OneWish co-founder, I might add, Louise Hosking. Louise took over the IOSH presidency in November 2021, having previously served as vice president for a couple of years. She started her health and safety journey as an environmental health officer as well, as did I, in fact, and she moved on to health and safety in the commercial property industry, and then started her own health and safety consultancy firm back in 2005. Welcome, Louise.
Thank you, Anne.
And last but by no means least, we're delighted to have with us Christine Sulivan, who is President-elect of the American Society of Safety Professionals, all over the pond. Christine is a Senior Vice President and Risk Control Director at Sampo International and has nearly 30 years of safety and health experience under her belt. Welcome, Christine. It's so lovely to see you.
Thank you, Anne.
So a huge welcome to you all. I'm so grateful for you joining us today because I think you've got so much experience. I don't even want to begin to calculate how many years of health and safety and associated practice we have on this panel, but I do know there's probably not a lot that hasn't crossed our desk over the course of our numerous years. So hopefully we can bring that wisdom to the panel discussion today. Without further ado, I'd like to kick off with hopefully a bit of a straightforward question, which sort of calls on all the experience that we've had. I'm interested to know how your presidency is going. I mean, some people have been in the presidency longer than others, but I would find it really interesting to know how you think it's going at the moment, what your plans are for the future, and what you're hoping to achieve during your term as president or president-elect. As Christine is at the moment, moving into the presidency in due course. So if I take my rota round, like I was introduced you all earlier. So Christl, would you like to tell us first of all how your presidency is going?
Quickly. That's the easiest way to put it, is it's going quickly. And if I thought when I was younger that time moved fast, wow, put yourself in a leadership position with, we've got a new CEO, same time Louise stepped into her position, we got a new CEO. At that time, we also got new bylaws. And one of the things I'm hoping to bring in is a new governance structure. We're moving to a more of a self-governance model, modeling ourselves much like the ASSP, our neighbors to the south. So to answer succinctly, it's moving very quickly, and there's a couple of things. I'm looking to bring stability to the governance. I'm looking to bring in a diverse and I dare I say nurturing type of governance structure, whereby we are looking for identifying our future leaders and putting pathways and streams in place in our own governance structure and within our organization to nurture those people up through the ranks and groom them to be the future leaders.
Fantastic. That sounds amazing. Ambitious, but doable, you think?
Just a little.
Yeah,
a little, but you know something, if you don't try and you don't, sometimes the goalposts move, but if you don't have the goalposts, you don't really know where you're going, or you don't really know, how are you going to know when you're there? You know, so those things are so important. Ambitious, of course. We're women.
Fantastic. Why not? Brilliant. Thank you for that, Christl. Julie, how's your presidency going?
I'm very sorely tempted to say what Christl said and leave it at that. It is flashing past. I can't believe 12 months has gone. When I started, I had some plans for what I wanted to do. As Christl, we had a new CEO at the same time as I started, and a new chair of the board of trustees. So we had to find each other first and then find out what our plans were jointly and severally. I have to say, in fairness to the new CEO, he's very much given me my head and said, make of the presidency what you want, which has been lovely. And it's allowed me to do exactly what I think the president should be doing, which is leading from the front, being very visible and doing things that our members value. So similarly to Christl, we are looking at helping people, and I've put in place a mentor scheme, 3 levels: students, middle managers, and those moving out of what are traditional places, local government, out into self-employment, so that members can help members. Very much the theme of my presidency is engaging with members. And that's what I'm trying to do. And moving forward, we're looking at more ways of engaging in the year coming up.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And as one of those members, it's obviously quite nice to hear. And I'm sure Louise would echo that as well. It's nice to have the president reach out and sort of speak to you personally in a way. So fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Julie. Ruth.
Hi. So equally, not been the co-president for very long, just slightly differently, I am co-president with someone called Callum, and we've decided to do this together because we felt we could have more impact, both of us doing this, than individually trying to manage our jobs and presidencies. So the thing that we are really focused on is the objective of IIRSM, which is about education in risk understanding and skills for the population that we integrate with, and also for a broader than just the UK, kind of looking at that international element, and hoping that we can help the very small team that are the management team at IIRSM and the people who deliver on it with ideas, innovations, our support to deliver on that promise, because it's a really, really key part of how we will have impact in the workplace. And I think it's really, really important that we build up these skills. So for us, that's the focus, and how we do that is going to play out over the next period of time.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing how that goes. Brilliant. How about you, Louise? How's it all going? It's not been long. But...
No, it hasn't. And I have to say that Christl is, yeah, I could have said almost exactly the same thing. And I think there's probably an interesting discussion about whether female presidents coming in looking at governance seems to be a theme, I think, and that's certainly something that's at the heart of my presidency. So when I became president back in November, I already knew that my theme was going to be around people, sustainability and putting heart into health and safety. So it's driving that message forward that, you know, we're in this incredible period of change, and actually we need to put our people first and their psychological and their physical health and safety, so that they can step up and take hold of all of these challenges that's facing the world at the moment. And we've got a fantastic campaign that's running all alongside that called Catch the Wave, which is all around how we articulate what we do in a different way and harness modern leadership skills to create value around what we do. So I'm a keen EDI champion, of course, and OneWish has always been part of that, looking at language. Like you, Christl, for me, governance is massively important, and people are sick of me saying good governance pathways. And so again, just like you, we're looking at, we have a council within IOSH which consists of elected members, and we've created some teams within that who we've always been very good at assurance, but actually driving forward on new ideas that are very member-led, so that we're looking to create the next trend, and working very closely alongside business and tier one partners such as the ILO, ESA, Commonwealth and the World Health Organization. So yeah, it's and also as my friend, one of my colleagues would say to me from OneWish, I'm definitely drinking from a fire hose. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge.
Yes, quite a significant one as well. I think you've not left yourself short of anything to do, I suspect. And interesting that you talk about the skills of the profession and what might be needed in the future. And I think we'll probably touch on a little bit of that later on. It's a very fascinating topic. Christine, how's it going? How do you predict that it's going to go?
Well, so my presidency doesn't start till July 1st, right? So as president-elect this year, it's interesting what everybody here has said, governance has been a big focus for ASSP this year, right? And we are actually in the process right now of going through an election with our House of Delegates regarding our governance. So that election ends mid-March, and we'll be really interested to see how that comes up. Kind of looking forward, I've always been a big believer in mentoring young professionals, and I think that's really important in helping them understand their role, how they move forward in their career. And as a female president and a female leader in an organization, I think it's really important to help people understand, male and female actually, that it's possible to have a leadership role as well as a family, because that's something I hear all the time. How do you do this with a family? I think the other thing too is, you know, Louise mentioned all the things going on in the world, and safety professionals 2 years, right? And our people know what a safety professional is and does. And I think it's important that we continue to increase, you know, the visibility and the value of our profession within corporations.
Yeah, amen to that. No, that sounds fantastic, and a very, very nice focus for the coming year, definitely. And a lot of what you've just said has resonated quite a lot. So I mean, there's a diversity of thought there, but there's also some themes, I think, coming through that we can see the need for. And I wonder whether that's, you know, partly driven by our own career challenges, our own experience of bias, etc. I mean, we talk about governance, you know, is it because the traditional model of governance has not maybe worked for us, or we can see some limitations to it. So it would be interesting to explore a bit of that in due course. But I'm interested to hear now, I mean, we are all in a prominent and pretty influential position, and we're all role models for people. I suppose we have been for a number of years as we've sort of become more visible perhaps to other people, and I'm keen to hear who your role models were as you were kind of coming through, and has anybody stood out for you as as somebody that's given you inspiration or has influenced the journey that you've taken, the direction that you took? So I'll throw it over in reverse order now. So Christine, do you want to come in on that one first?
All right. This is a tough question. I've had so many role models, so many mentors throughout my career that it's hard to just say this person is the one. I currently work for a gentleman who was my first boss in the safety industry. He's actually the reason I'm in the industry. I worked for him for about a year, and now 28, 29 years later, I'm working for him again. So it's absolutely fascinating because we've kept that mentor relationship for 25 years. And I think that he is a very big part of that. But when I look at ASSP, I think the female leaders of ASSP, whether they were on the board or just leaders in general of different parts of the organization, have really been role models for me, right? They supported me, they pushed me, they encouraged me throughout my career, really to stretch myself and to think about what I could be. Faye Feeney, who was never the president of ASSP, but was the chair of the ASSP Foundation. She always pushed me, think big, help, and really pushed me to, understand, hey, you can do great things. You're really good at what you do. Trish Ennis, who was a past president of ASSP, as well as a foundation chair. Trish and I were both from Colorado, or in Colorado at the same time. And she really was a great sounding board for me as I kind of embraced different roles within ASSP, whether it was the VP of Professional Development or Finance, both roles she had prior to me, as well as this current role of president. She's just been that sounding board to help me understand some of the issues and things I should be thinking about. Anyway, there's so many others I could name, that have helped me on this journey. Even you guys on the call, right? It's just there's so many people that have been part of what I look at from a role model standpoint.
And so those role models, did they? I mean, you mentioned, some of the things that they brought to your consciousness, perhaps, some of the work that they'd done. Was there anything around their skill set in particular? I mean, you maybe sort of, I don't know, listening, picking up on things as you spoke. Did you feel like they had any particular skill sets that made them like that?
So for my first mentor that I mentioned that I currently work for, it was just really the supportiveness, that supportive encouragement, and wanting to see me do my best, right? And being that person that can do the best. I look at Faye, and Faye taught me about things with sustainability and things that I really didn't understand or know at that point in my career, and really understand the importance, when I was working with her on other stuff. So I think it's just a little bit of everything, but it's more that support, that person that's just there that wants to see you achieve your best.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's important, isn't it, for a mentor or an inspiration? They've got your back, and, there's no competition. There's no side to it. It's there's just everybody striving for the same thing. That's really interesting. Thank you, Christine. Louise, how about you?
Yeah, no, I love all of what Christine was saying, and I think like her, you have different role models as you go through your journey. I think when I was younger, I had a great aunt who was a naval, who was in the Navy in the war, and my grandmother built munitions in a factory at that time. And I remember, I mean, they're long gone, unfortunately, now, but I remember when I was younger, they really inspired me. And I think that's where I definitely think within my family there's strong female genes, and those people definitely gave me strength. I think within one of the things I've heard recently around health and safety is, how can we support members and people within the professional affected by the profession of different social statuses. And certainly I came from quite a working class background, and I wasn't expected to go on to university, but I had people at the time who encouraged me to do that. And actually just getting into environmental health can be, which Julie will probably mention, it can be quite challenging. So I think, I had people around me at that time to just say, just keep going. And I think it's harder, it definitely gets harder as you progress, but the networks that we've created over time. And just feeling like you can pick up the phone to anybody now, you know, makes a huge difference. Karen McDonnell was the last IOSH female president 6 years ago. So she's been a huge influence. And then, you know, you've got people on the world stage like, you know, Jacinda from New Zealand, and, you know, her strength in communication, and that you can be empathetic, you can be caring, and you can bring all of those, you know, skills into a leadership role that has a more nurturing style, and actually that's okay. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people that we are influenced by, and isn't it fantastic that actually we're all accessible? So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what you just described, you sort of draw strength. I mean, we had a little bit of a chat about imposter syndrome earlier, didn't we? Which may well again come out. But I think when you see women on the world stage like that, they may well be, you know, exactly the same as us. You know, they may look at themselves and wake up every morning and think, oh, what now? You know, how am I going to manage this? But, you know, they go out, they've got their game face on, and, you know, we can draw strength from that, I think, because it's absolutely doable, isn't it? Super. Ruth, how about yourself?
This is such a hard question, because when you look back, there are so many people that have influenced kind of the way you are today. And so I land on one person who's probably had the most impact on me today, and she was my manager at ITV for about 5 years. She was the company secretary, talking of governance. So I have a very good understanding of governance now, but she just was an incredible person to work for, because she gave me the freedom to be the most impactful person I could be, and helped me work out how to navigate the stuff that isn't safety, because actually the safety stuff and the health stuff and the risk stuff, the technical bit was the easy bit, but how do you make that really work in a global organization, in a boardroom? How do you get the language right and land things in the right way? I just count myself as so lucky to have worked for someone who would spend the time working with me on that, but also build my understanding, because it means you can achieve so much more. And it's kind of where my passion for other people understanding the language of risk and all those things come from, in that you can see it's different if you can speak in the way you need to have impact. And I don't think we're exposed to that enough. Maybe in the profession, and maybe also as females, we don't get that window as much as we might have otherwise. So she would be Helen would be my top person, but there are so many others.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating, isn't it? Because it makes you a complete professional practitioner, I suppose. You know, you can be technically very good, and we all know people who are technically very good but perhaps don't have that rounded understanding of how to be with other people, how to inspire them, how to support them, as with the sort of words that have come through. And
sometimes you can be very much too technical, so you try and evidence, you know, what you're talking about, by being actually bringing too much technical into a boardroom, when actually you just need to give a flavor of the technical, and then the right questions, and get people to ask the right questions and be interested in the right things. And it really made me change my perspective of what I was trying to achieve, so that I could then have more, rather than proving myself. Because sometimes you go into those things and you feel, to the imposter syndrome, I've got to prove I'm worth it here, rather than actually what can I get more for this organisation from being here.
Yeah, and there's something in there, I suppose, for young professionals to say that it's not all about technical learning. You know, people who have a way about them, you know, a way of dealing with people, or of interacting, or of sharing their knowledge that's not technical, are people worth seeking out and learning from. Definitely. Brilliant, thank you. Julie, how about you?
Well, I'm going to buck the trend, actually, because I would say my greatest influence was male. Because of the time I came into environmental health, there weren't many females that you could look to as role models. And my mentor, my role model, was Bryn Jones, who was my boss when I came to South Wales, who was very much, before his time, very keen to encourage women, recruited women, promoted women, supported women, and was very quick to say, of course you can. Do this. Here's an opportunity. Take it. And even when I said to him, I'm going to leave environmental health and go into law, the sort of thing you would expect him to say, don't do that. Yeah, absolutely. Do it. Do it. You know, you've got stuff, you've got skills and knowledge that you can take with you. But also, kept me in the profession, even though I went off to law, kept me in environmental health, kept me involved with the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. And then when I came back to be Director Wales, which I set up as a new post, was there as a trustee, helping me, supporting me, bringing his new network to me. Very much a strong supporter of mine. I went from being a mentor to being a very, very close friend, someone who I implicitly trusted. And I think I was very lucky to have somebody like that. I think you're very lucky to have someone in your career that's there almost from the start, certainly right up to pretty much when I retired. Bryn was there. And I knew if I went and spoke to him, he'd give me sensible advice. Never offered it without being asked, but was generally worth listening to. Much more of a mentor than a role model. And he's been the sort of mentor I try to be. I try to reflect his mentoring style in mine because it worked for me. And I don't think I'd be where I am now if it wasn't for him. Yeah.
So the value of a trusted sounding board. Yeah, it's invaluable, isn't it? We talk in OneWish a lot about male advocates. So this is not, this is never gender specific. And I think you're right. Some of the skills that we want to draw on, some of the perspectives that come from our male colleagues are just as valuable as the ones that we get from our female ones. And I agree completely. Lovely, thank you. Christl, who's been your role model and inspiration?
Besides the obvious, my mother, I had a very strong, my mom was a very driving force for me. I was the oldest daughter. I've got 2 younger brothers, and I was a bossy kid. I was a leader from the beginning. And so my mom was instrumental in teaching me that I was going to have challenges. First of all, A, I'm loud and bossy, and B, I'm a girl. So she taught me a little bit of temperance. So that was the first foray into it. After that, I started to study more psychological and more philosophical things, Khalil Gibran, for example. But then I settled on Maya Angelou, and that came to me through Oprah, and watching Oprah, who also, was vocal when she was younger, and she was quite in your face all the time, and so she managed to, well, look at Oprah. So that's where she got through. And as I started getting into governance, and as I started getting into leadership, and as soon as I started hiring my own people, much the same as everybody else, my mentors changed. And I had a very strong male influence, and he was one of the CEOs at a manufacturing company I worked with at least 20 years ago. And what he did is he fired me. And but you know something, he fired me because he said to me, I can't give you any more. I can't do any more for you. You are ready to do this on your own. And I was only like 30 years old, and I'm like, no, I'm not. But then I learned, yeah, I was. And right around that time, I started to get into, believe it or not, the monarchy. And so I think the biggest influence for me, and this sounds strange from a Canadian, was Princess Di.
Okay.
And it was Princess Diana because of the grace with which that she did things. Didn't matter the adversity, didn't matter what was going on in her life, there was grace. And that to me was all about how I wanted to build my relationships, how I wanted to forge those relationships and business alliances and those types of things. So I had the gamut as well, and I'm grateful for all of them. I do have to drop one name, and that would be, in our world, Eldine Pozniak.
Oh yes.
And we all nod with Eldine and Inchbo, and that when I got this position, she was the first one in my emails to say, you got this, girl. Thank you.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I just say she sent me a card as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing. She is such a powerful ally as well, and I think she's one of those people that you could just turn to and you might not have spoken to. In fact, the first time I met her was so many years ago, a million years ago, and I was, fairly wet behind the ears, I would say, and we met at a conference in Canada, and I must have 20 years must have passed actually, and then just emailed her out of the blue, and it was like we'd seen each other yesterday. It's so lovely, fantastic,
Great mentor.
Well, thank you very much for that. That's been really insightful. I think everything that you've described has had a slightly different angle to it. So I think we sort of know the kind of skills that we're looking for that are going to make us into better, more rounded professionals. So I guess it kind of brings us on to, so you've described some of those maybe leaders that have had an influence on you. But I'm now interested in hearing about your leadership style and whether perhaps it's been influenced by the people that you've mentioned before, or perhaps you've sort of forged your own over the course of years, a little bit like a glacier, something that forges. I don't know. So I'd be really interested to hear how you would describe your leadership style, I guess, rather than how you think other people would describe it. And crucially, I think we talked about male influence in our careers, whether you think your leadership style is now different from what you've experienced as you've been coming through your career from our male counterparts, or whether you've drawn on some of that to help you out with yours. So I'm going to go through in alphabetical order now, so I'm not favouring anybody. Christl, it just so happens that it comes straight back to you.
It was that way when I was a kid in school, both my first and
I was always first of vaccines.
Yeah, followed by the Christines, actually.
Yeah, and it will.
So I'm a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a coach. There's no doubt about it. I tend to be affiliative in nature, facilitation. My style is definitely about building relationships and being that collaborative person. I bring the technical skills because like most of the leaders, I've got boots on the ground experience as well. And I don't think that you can be a leader without it. As far as, am I different than my male counterparts? Absolutely. I'm different than my male counterparts, but I think what we're seeing is a difference in leadership style across the board, both in not-for-profit as well as in the corporate boardroom. I think we're starting to see a shift towards human capital, sustainability. I think we're starting to value people's input, worker input. I think we're starting to recognize that health is the first in health and safety. It's the first word that's there, that we tended to just not ignore, but I think we looked at it more as occupational disease, mesotheliomas, and those types of things. And then we started to look at mental injury. And I think that the female perspective has traditionally been a nurturing perspective, and the autocratic side of leadership traditionally comes from the male side. And I think what we're starting to see is that marriage. I think we're starting to see that those things are finally becoming leadership qualities and transcending gender. And I think that is really powerful. And I think it's something that makes me excited to be sitting here with these ladies, because we're all in that, we're all on the stage now.
Yeah, absolutely. And presumably, we've talked a lot about this within OneWish, about what female leadership brings to traditional leadership, I suppose, and you would perhaps call that male leadership, and some of the traditional feminine traits, and how they're starting to blend and make a better leader at the result of it all. So yes, I hear exactly what you're saying. Christine, how do you see your leadership style?
You know, I think it's hard to say just one, right? Because I tend to be one that really adapts my leadership style to the situation, right? I've got a pretty significant sized team. And it's really important to me to understand how they work and how they process information before and that influences how I interact with them, right? But if I were to pick two words, I would say probably trust and communication, right? I trust my team implicitly. Yeah, I trust them to do their job. I trust them to do good work, and I value open communication back and forth between us. You know, I've got some newer employees, obviously, that are going to need more guidance, and then I've got the more experienced ones, and my job is to empower them. You know, empower them to go off and trust them to do their jobs and do it well, and bring me and involve me when they need that feedback and need that additional assistance. But I'm a big believer in that trust. I think Christl's answer about kind of, am I different than my male counterparts? Yes and no, right? It's kind of hard to say. I'm not warm fuzzy all the time, right? I'm a pretty direct person. I am going to communicate and tell my team as much as I can tell them, right? Sometimes there's information we can't share, but I do believe in open and honest communication with them. So I'm not always going to coddle them, right? So that piece, but I think that marriage of leadership, right, of being strong, but also having that empathy is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's very resonant, and that kind of being a hands-off leader is an interesting one, isn't it? So it does take a lot of, well, I don't know whether it takes a lot of work or you know, a lot of self-belief to be able to trust other people to crack on without standing over them all the time, but it's definitely a very positive, because of course it allows people to develop themselves and grow as professionals as well.
It's a challenge. You have to learn to delegate, and again, going back to that word trust, and trust that they're going to execute, right?
Yeah, because I suppose the temptation is sometimes to try and step in and control things, especially if you know, like them done a certain way. But yes, so that is a skill to be able to sit back and let it all unfold in front of you, for sure. Julie, how about you? What's your leadership style, do you think?
It's interesting. I was thinking about this because it certainly developed and changed through my career. When I came into environmental health, as I said, women were very much a rarity, and you had to have your elbows out and push your way through.
Yeah.
As I've progressed up, the need to do that has become less, obviously, because there is less competition. People are listening to you more. Mm-hmm. So my style has changed. I would say it's fairly inclusive. I wanted to be the sort of president that people could talk to, get in touch with, engage with. So my motto has always been, you know, if you speak to me, I'll speak to you. Get in touch with me and I will answer. Mm-hmm. And very supportive, I think, very much about supporting people. I know there are people who think I'm inspirational because they tell me that. And my view is it can't be that difficult if I've done it. And if I've done it, you can probably do it. And I'm quite happy to tell you how I did it so that you can do it too. So very much supporting, nurturing, caring, but also very results driven. If I set out to do something, I want to see it right through to the end. Mm-hmm. And being a lawyer, I've got the forensic analysis skills to make sure that happens. Some would say that I can be assertive. I would like to say that I can be quite clear. Okay. In my ambition.
Yeah, that's nice. And all those skills are a means to an end then, isn't it? You know, you don't necessarily have to, you know, be brutal about achieving a goal, because all of the things you just described, the collaboration, the communication, the empathy, the, you know, working with people and sort of understanding how they are to bring out the best in them, everything that we've just discussed is just as legitimate a way as getting to the end of a project as anything else. Super. Louise.
Yeah, I love what everybody else is saying. Julie, I often say I'm an ordinary member who's done some extraordinary things. So yeah, I definitely concur with those comments. What kind of a leader am I? So I've been working quite closely with Peter Kelly, who some people will know, who's a psychologist, and he's supporting some of the sort of transformations that I'm putting in place in the governance structure. And apparently I'm a transformational leader, according to him. So I'm definitely somebody who will you know, I want to create that kind of transformation and that forward looking, but I want to do it in a way that takes others with me. And, you know, definitely I'm somebody I don't like being told what to do, so I don't want to tell other people what to do. And I want them to be creative and innovative, and I think that's what our profession needs right now. So certainly the teams that I'm creating right at this moment in time, you know, we've really mixed people up, we've created that diversity of thought, and we're really trying to harness that. So, you know, empowering and exactly as you've said, sometimes I just want to go in there and meddle, but it is about, you know, saying this is the framework, this is the direction, this is the vision. And yeah, I think I'm the same in that, you know, I want to see it happen, and at the same time I'm a finisher, so, you know, I won't rest until the job's done.
That's it. Tenacity. It's always a good one.
Yeah.
Seeing it through. And finally, Ruth, what's your leadership style?
I feel like I'm just going to take bits of all the four before me when I say what I. So I would say I'm passionate and I love to inspire people. So I love to do that with the team. I collaborate really closely with the team and the organisation or where I'm working. And one thing that I value probably above anything else is integrity from people, from the organisation I'm in. And I think that's really, really important. And I think that's really important in the way I am and the role model that I am, but also the place that I work and the people that work with me. I very much give people space and autonomy to do their best work, and like let them come to me and be there if people need me, and to be a sounding board, but not to do micromanagement, and to tell people exactly how to do it, to help them solve things themselves. And the question you asked about male and female traits, I think, and it's sort of back to what Christl was saying, I think that it's changed a lot, and whether that's the change in the nature of boardroom makeup, if it's diversity in its whole changing boardrooms, or what all our perceptions of leadership is changing too now, it feels like it would not pay it the right credence to say it's a female thing. It's a change in what is perceived as successful leadership now, the kind of the giving direction, expecting everyone to follow without empathy, without understanding, without the engagement. I think it's really interesting to see how leadership has changed. I'd like to think females have been part of that change, but I wouldn't say it's just about a way females and males lead point.
No, I think you're right, but it comes home to me. I mean, maybe it's a little bit like, you know, the change has been so subtle that you don't notice it until you actually start thinking about the reverse. And if we were to work in an environment where, you know, everything was very direct and things were, you know, perhaps in the more traditional line of management, I think we'd all notice straight away and probably feel quite uncomfortable with that now, which is testament, I think, to how things have changed for the better. And we all perhaps know people who are still quite traditional in their views of management, and you know, it feels slightly uncomfortable these days. So no, that's good. We've alluded through some of these discussions, and we did at the outset, around overcoming biases, overcoming challenges, and the theme of this year's International Women's Day is around breaking those biases. And I dare say we've all come across, I mean, Julie was saying before, very male orientated when she started out. I'm sure we've all had similar experiences. I'm keen to hear, and I think probably people listening would be keen to hear about what you feel like your biggest, I mean, we've all had lots of challenges, but what you feel like perhaps your biggest challenge that you've faced during your career has been, and actually, do you think you overcame it, or do you think you're still battling on that front already, or you know, maybe part of the way through overcoming that? So I'm going to start with Julie on this one.
I think I've been my biggest challenge, to be perfectly honest. Believing that I couldn't.
Okay.
Having to tell myself, yes, you can do this. Yes, you can be as good as everybody else. You can go for that promotion. You can ask for what it is that you want. You can articulate how you want this done, and it will be fine. And we did talk about imposter syndrome, and even now I'm telling myself, you are the president, you can do this. You can be good at this. You can make it as good as you can. I think that's, whether it's a female thing or not, no, but certainly it's been one of my challenges to make myself accept that I can do it. I should go for it. I should give it my best shot, and it will be good enough. And my best is acceptable. And I don't know if that's a common trait, as I said, but it's certainly been an issue for me. I had at the beginning of my career, as I said, certain difficulties, being one of the earlier women, and one of the earlier women in Northern Ireland, where women were very rare in environmental health. So there was a lot of, I'm not going to be the one that makes the tea and sends the letters out. I'm actually going to be out doing the job, and I can do it like everybody else. And I think I overproved that, which was a mistake looking back, but probably how I got to be where I am.
Did you have to draw on resources then to be that person? I mean, was the I don't know whether it's a temptation perhaps just to fall into that role, or you know, because you were relatively junior, perhaps just to adopt that kind of perhaps more servile attitude to everything. Did you have to actually, you know, really take yourself to task and say, no, I'm not going to be that person. I'm actually going to, you know, fight that whole instinct to, you know, make life easy for myself, maybe?
Yes, I think I did fight it. It would have been quite easy to be the one that stayed in the office doing the admin. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be out. I trained like the boys to do all the things that everybody else did, and I wanted to be out there doing it. And I was very fortunate early in my career, certainly in Northern Ireland, to have a very non-traditional boss who appointed a woman and supported her. I was quite happy to say, yes, get out there. You don't have to stay in filling the forms. Get out there and do the job. And similarly to Christl's experience, after 2 years said to me, look, you're not going to get anywhere here. Such is the nature of the political environment here. You're not going to progress. Seriously think about leaving, which is, it's a brave thing to do when you've nurtured somebody, you've taken them on, you've supported them, and then you tell them to go somewhere else where they could be more than they are now. And I look back on that and think that was a very good thing for him to do. But it also made me think, yes, I can do this. He thinks I can do it, so I must be able to do it. Which is it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, and I suppose you've got to draw on your inner reserves of resilience as well, haven't you? Because to be told that almost like, well, you're not, you know, you're not going to fulfill yourself here anymore, so off you trot. Was, you know, you sort of take it to heart a little bit. Oh, what's the matter with me? So, but to turn that outwards and say, actually, this is the best opportunity I could have been given. Is quite a strong thing to do, isn't it? Louise, how about your biggest challenge? Are you still fighting it? Or
yeah, I mean, I was going to say exactly the same as Julie. I'm definitely my own worst enemy, and that's definitely been my biggest challenge. And it's, you know, and I think part of that is you look around and you know, compare yourself to other people. You know, we've always had this image of what a strong leader is, and you know, I've always felt, am I good enough, you know, but I think in some ways as well that's a positive trait, because I remember when I started my career, you know, I couldn't command attention, so you use your whole skill set to actually involve people and to take them with you. But yeah, I quite often I'm still afraid of making mistakes. I have this kind of perfectionism that sits above my head, because you feel like it's going to be picked up because you're not this kind of traditional style of leader. So yeah, it's definitely myself that holds me back. But I just keep putting one foot in front of the other, because it comes back to, and if I want other people to come up behind and see that being a leader isn't about one type of person. We can have different types of leaders. So yeah, I keep pushing on my own comfort zone.
Yeah, I find this introspection really interesting. We turn it in on ourselves and wonder what's, whether something's lacking in us, or whether we need to do anything a little bit better, or put twice the amount of effort in. I'm sure a psychologist would have a field day over this, but sadly we wouldn't have time for that today. Ruth, what's your biggest challenge, do you reckon?
I was thinking about this, and I think it has to be, it's partly myself, because that is often, and I think from this theme, always the biggest challenge, and mine has been 11 years ago, going back to work after my first child and then having a second one, and balancing my own expectations of what I wanted to be as a parent and what I wanted as a career. And feeling like for a long time you're neither doing either as well as you can. And certainly I felt that a lot the last 2 years with COVID, when you're trying to manage everything. But one of the things that my husband and I did when I went back to work was we both went part-time. And I think what that really helped me in thinking, we're both part of this, because a lot of people I know, someone went part-time and was the childcare solution, but definitely all through it, and I'm sure it will last until they are well into their 20s, you're always asking yourself if you could be doing either better. Yeah. And are you compromising one because you're spending time doing the other thing? And I think that is the biggest challenge. And I think it's just life. And I think maybe the perception that you can have it all, that I felt I was taught younger, probably it wasn't ever kind of couched with you can have it all, but you are going to have to compromise sometimes. You are going to have to go away for the night when one of your children wants to speak to you, and it's just, and equally you're going to maybe have to miss a meeting or dial in because you've got to be at home because someone's ill. And so I think for me that's been the biggest challenge, and I'm sure it is to people who have dependents all over the place. But it's definitely, it maybe made me a better leader, because I've got a lot more empathy for people who are going through all sorts of things now than I would have had before I had to do the juggling act.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's lots of people listening who are hearing that and nodding away. I mean, I certainly am, and that I was similarly, I'm a family of women, and I was similarly told, you can have it all, and actually the scales fall from your eyes at some point. You say, well, no, it's not like having everything full time. Is you can't have everything full time. You've got to compromise at some point. I remember it, just sort of like as an aside, I do remember my sister, we were having a discussion many years ago, and I said, well, I don't define myself by being a mother. I define myself, and she couldn't believe that in some way my career might come before my child. And it's not quite as straightforward as that, but the fact I had to stop and think, well, I don't know what I'm defined as then. I don't know what is actually taking up more of my brain space. Is it being a parent, or is it, having a career? And, how the two mesh together in my head. So it left me a bit baffled, and I didn't speak to her for a while, which is probably for the best in those circumstances. Anyway, family troubles aside, Christine, how about your biggest challenge?
I could say everything that has been said already. I do think that negative self-talk gets in my head sometimes, and I have to, that voice in your head, you just have to shut it down as much as you can. And, when I changed jobs 3 years ago, I was with my prior company 22 years. I went to my current role about 3.5 years ago now. That was a big deal, right? To leave someplace I was really comfortable, and my head kept saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Right. And so just being able to put that down And I think Ruth hit it on the head with the family. I've got 3 children. 2 are in college now, but my youngest is only 11. So, you know, I've got this big gap here, and really trying to balance and make sure that they get what they need from me, but that my job gets what it needs from me. And I relate to you perfectly. I don't define myself as being the mother. I mean, I am a mom. I have a family. I love my children dearly, but I also know that I love my job and I love what I do, and I love you know, being out and with clients and working with people. So, you know, those are both struggles, and I don't know that will ever go away. I think the question was, has this, you know, have you overcome it? I don't know that I've overcome it. You learn to work with it, right? And you learn to work with it in your life. Kind of taking it a different direction, I think every challenge in your career is a chance to improve and get better, right? So like Julie and some of you have heard this story, my first job, I was told I should be home having babies. So that was where, you know, my very first safety job, and I had to work my way through it. I've had challenges where I took on leading a team that was formerly my peers, and that was bumpy, right? Transitioning to the leader from the peer is bumpy, but I think every challenge you get, you've got to take it, learn from it, and move forward.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, I hear you for sure. Christl, how about you? What's your biggest challenge?
There's not a whole lot to add here. What I wrote down from my notes was fear. The biggest challenge for me was fear. Fear I'm not good enough. Fear that I'm not doing the job the way that my membership wants me to do it. You know, am I providing too much? Am I not providing enough? That negative speak that Christine talks about. Am I teaching my daughter, who is my husband's daughter? I don't have children. She's my daughter, but all of those things that you go through to either, the negative speak for me has always been the push. It's always been that driving force to do better, but am I doing it the right way? Are the people who I'm choosing to be my mentors really mentors, or am I just doing what they would do, or what they think I should do? And so that fear of my brain's telling me that my mentors maybe not on the right path here, and that's not how I would do it. But that negative speak telling me, well, you better follow your mentor because that person's got to where they wanted to be, and that kind of thing. So there's a whole, the biggest thing was for me was the negative speak, the head talk, the imposter syndrome, that I'm not good enough. I don't have that MBA, and I don't have that PhD, and I don't have all of that stuff. And when you talk about the second part of that question is, have I overcome that? I don't think I ever will. And I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. I'm truly, truly okay with that, because I'm not alone. Other people are never, ever going to overcome that either. So as long as they can see me in my role as pushing through it and accepting that and still being able to get the job done, I'm doing the right thing and I'm overcoming that fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, we're hearing from all corners about, and I suppose it's about the skills you employ to overcome that, in the same way that Julie was saying. You know, it's the temptation is to fit in with what's expected of you and you know, adopt that role, but you know, you actively turn away from that, and you've just described almost the same thing, Christl. I mean, you're actively suppressing something that will probably come, you know, a little more naturally. And I think probably we're all there in that. The line of least resistance is quite tempting sometimes, but we know we owe it to ourselves and probably to people who look to us as inspirations to suppress that and turn away from it and plow on. Yeah, it's forge on, absolutely. And so we've kind of touched on, brings us to our last question, really. And you know, we speak about people coming into the profession, we you know, perhaps at the start of their careers, and we've don't know, I wouldn't like to say we're all long in the tooth, because that's perhaps a little bit insulting, but we've all, you know, we've all done a shift, I think, and probably have something to teach people coming along behind us. And I'm keen to explore what you think your younger self, let's say at the start of your career, if they were talking to you now, what would they say to you? And perhaps what you would say to them, what would your response be? Do you think that person that started out on that career journey all those years ago would believe that they were talking to themselves 20, 30, 40 years down the line, and in the position that you are now? So yeah, it's quite an interesting question, I think, whether they'd ever quite fathom out where you've got to. How about you, Louise? What do you reckon?
Yeah, my younger self, I was incredibly driven and very ambitious when I was, you know, when I started out. And I think part of what's given me a really good grounding, I think, you know, we have this conversation in IOSH around our future leaders coming into the profession and how hard it is for them to get the first foot on, you know, on the ladder. And be nurtured at that point, because a lot of health and safety professionals are in a kind of team of one or two. And I think what helped me was certainly starting from an environmental health perspective and working in a local authority. You're actually in a bigger team. And so I had a really, you know, my first 10 years of my career were incredibly strong, where, you know, I went from working for a local authority, I worked for the cooperative, again in a team. And I think, you know, I was incredibly ambitious, and I think my younger self would probably say, well, I'm not surprised, but I think the advice that I'd probably give my younger self is to just, you know, is to kind of tailor that as well, and just, you know, things happen when they should happen. I mean, somebody said to me, you know, we have the right president at the right time, and to allow yourself to have all of the different experiences that you have, you know, accept help and support, and you know, it's a question of push and pull, and have that in the right balance, and be kind on yourself as well, I think I'd say to my younger self.
Fantastic. And do you think she'd listen?
And you know me.
I do, that's why I asked. And I've known you for quite a long time as well, so I probably experienced a little bit of that younger self. But yes, I'm hearing it. Christine, how about you? What would you talk to your younger self about?
You know, I would hope my younger self would be like, wow, you did it, right? Like that's what I would hope my younger self would say, because I had very high expectations for myself, right? I took a job, moved, you know, 2,000 miles away from home to get into this field, and really had high expectations of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And I would hope my younger self would see that and be like, wow. If I were going to give them advice, I'd say tell them not to be afraid to set stretch goals. Christl mentioned earlier about stretch goals and you've got to have a goalpost. Set those goals. It's okay if they stretch, even if they think it's unrealistic. Break it into manageable chunks, right? Set manageable goals for yourself. Surround yourself with good people, right? Good people that support you, people that lift you up, and don't be afraid to make a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes, right? Own your mistakes, move on. And then the other thing I would tell them, celebrate your success. Make sure you take that time to celebrate your success, because I think too often we just move on to the next thing rather than, hey, we did it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be a bit, you know, single-minded, can't it? And not taking the opportunity to just appreciate how you're getting on and what it's given you and what it's taught you along the way. No, definitely. How about you, Julie?
I think I would tell my younger self, yes, you can. You absolutely can. You are good enough. And if you put the work in, you are good enough, and you are entitled to be where you will be, because you've achieved it through your own efforts and hard work and help from mentors. Someone said to me once that women in the workplace who want to get on are like Lucy Van Pelt from Peanuts.
Okay.
Aggressive, assertive, not very pleasant, and it stuck with me for a very long time. And I think I'd tell my younger self that's not actually true. You can be a woman in a leading position and be the sort of woman you want to be. You don't have to fit into a model of an aggressive, assertive, abrasive person. That's not who you have to be. And I think I would say, as Christine did, celebrate your successes. Take your time to celebrate them before you move on. Don't bounce past them to the next challenge. Recognise you've done it and bathe in a warm glow just for a little while before you move on. Because the successes are, they're not as frequent as you'd like them to be, and they're heady when they come. Don't waste them.
Yes, yes, that much is true. And do you think your younger self would look at you and say, yeah, I always knew that was going to happen?
No, my younger self would be astonished at where I am now. And so would my mother, I have to say.
Just for conscience. Lovely. Okay, Ruth, how about you?
I think astonished is a great word.
Yes.
My younger self would definitely just like be surprised and actually kind of, how did it end up there? Because I don't think, I've absolutely followed my heart and been curious all the time about what I'm doing and where I go. My first ever job was in the theatre doing safety. It wasn't what everybody else went into because there was lots of construction jobs and corporate jobs. And I was like, no, I love the creative industries. I'm going in there. And who knew these roles were out there? I certainly didn't know. And that's one of the things I really want to get people interested in who are interested in this profession is, gosh, it's a broad church of places you can work and things you can do, and you can find your niche. And that doesn't mean you need to be the most important person in the organisation. It means you need to do something you love, you care about. And one of the biggest things I'd be really pleased about if I was looking at me today is I always wanted to be doing something that when I looked up at the clock, I was astonished by how much time had passed since the last time I saw it.
Yeah.
And that happens to me every day. I go, oh no, hang on, I'm running late. And so I just think it's an amazing opportunity to have got to work in this profession and do the things that we get to do, and then support education of other people and people coming in. It's a real privilege.
It is a privilege, you're right, absolutely. I mean, you're sitting here, you know, you sort of say as a professional, it's a privilege to sit amongst women of your collective caliber, but I think everything that we do is also a privilege as well. So yeah, I agree completely. And it's nice to hear somebody else didn't have a plan in a way, just go where it blows.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And finally, Christl, what's your words of wisdom to your younger self?
My younger self would have said to me, I don't think you've got it in you. That's what my younger self would have said to me. But now if I look back and I could say something to them, if I could say to my younger self, I would tell myself to trust the process and to trust my instincts. And like Ruth, follow those dreams, follow my heart, follow my passions. And then me on the flip side, I want to say to my younger self, surprise, surprise, surprise.
Fantastic. That's excellent. Christine, did I speak to you about this? I did, didn't I? I was working my way around a screen and I've lost my little pictures now, so I just want to make sure I've covered it. But that is a great ending, I've got to say. And yeah, you're right. I think there's I mean, I don't know whether everybody else feels the same, but there's a little bit of, goodness me, haven't you done well? And I think we all need to bask in that a little bit. And for all the younger professionals out there, take that time when you do it just to self-reflect and bask in your own glory. I think that's fantastic. Well, I mean, I've been awed by this session. I think the collective wisdom on here has just been immense, absolutely awesome. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to speak to us about how your career has gone and what you've learned and crucially what you tell your younger selves, because I think that will certainly resonate to those listening in. Don't forget, for those that are, all of our panels are on LinkedIn, panelists are on LinkedIn. So if you want to catch up on their fantastic thought leadership as they move through the next stage of their careers, whatever life gives them, then, you know, tune in with LinkedIn, and then you can find out what's going on. But a huge thank you both to the panelists and to everybody who's listening in today to this session. It's been fantastic. So thank you very much, and I will now hand back over to our continuity.